Pinto. I'm the diabetes nurse clinician for the hospital. And there was an event not too long ago where there was a patient admitted over the weekend, well, on a Friday, I think. And it really wasn't clear on just exactly what he was going to allow the nurses to do for him regarding his finger sticks and that kind of thing. So he was only willing to utilize his own meter for his blood sugar testing, and he would not allow us to do any finger sticks with our point-of-care meter, which is a yellow flag in that we need to have a record of his finger sticks in our charting. So anyone coming behind is going to be able to know what his sugars have been doing. So luckily he remained safe through his whole admission, and I think some folks from the endo clinic came over, right, Karen?
Yeah, they
on
came
a
over
Monday.
Monday. Yeah,
Two of them did? Okay, great. Well, strength in numbers, right? Anyway, so like I say, he was discharged, I think, that next week, probably like midweek. So he was safe, but going forward, we just wanted to touch on the high points of our policy so everybody can know a little bit more about how this policy sort of came about and what the purpose of it is. And so going forward, if you would get a type 1 diabetic that was on the insulin pump, just how important it is for them to agree to what our policy states and really abide by what the policy is about so they can remain safe here under our care. Okay, so this paper here is just a summary in a very easy form for the nurses to reference to, and it is in this new binder that Callie has put together, front and back, and it summarizes really the whole policy except for the appendices, which I have here in this little stapled copy here for you. That's just really accentuates the high points instead of pulling up the whole policy. So when a patient comes in to the rehab center, they're going to be here for rehab, and if they're able to demonstrate by this first page their self-knowledge of their own insulin pump, then they're allowed to keep using it as long as the doctor okays that. And one of his basic items for him to reference to as far as if the patient is safe is this form. If the patient fills it out pretty much to its entirety and you feel that they are demonstrating that they are able to use their pump accurately and safely, then you would go ahead and check at the bottom met criteria, and then you would sign it. This original would go into their paper chart and be ready for scanning when the patient is discharged. On the back of this is the insulin pump patient agreement. Now this was developed so there wouldn't be any gray area related to what the patient's responsibilities are to us and what our responsibilities are to them. So the top paragraph numbered there 1 through 9 is what the patient's responsibilities are to us. And the bottom ones are what designates why the pump would be discontinued for any reason. If they lose impairment of their level of consciousness, if the doctor feels it's indicated. For any procedure or testing requires removal of the pump, that would be a CT scanner and MRI. If they're going to be having a surgery that's going to be high valve, surgery that's going to take longer than 2 hours, and especially if they're a type 1, they could go into DKA within 2 hours, and that is not what we would want for the patient, and they would not want that either, so the pump would usually come off and go home with a family member until which time they would or would not restart it, while they're here. Hopefully they would be able to restart it. Failure to bring his own non-medical pump supplies. We do have emergent extra supplies for the Medtronic MiniMed Paradigm pump, over at the hospital. And we have had occasion of using those over at the hospital for those patients that say maybe they're in a car crash and they don't have their pump supplies with them and they have nobody to bring them. This would be the batteries, the reservoir to fill their pump with insulin that the hospital supplies. We do not use any of their own insulin. The hospital supplies all of the rapid-acting insulin that would go into their pump. The only kind of insulin pumps used are rapid-acting, okay? Because it's a continuous infusion. Just like it mirrors normalcy, you know, if their pancreas was working properly and or if they could produce any insulin. Okay, so a failure to follow any component of the above agreement, critical illness requiring intensive care post-operatively, or major psychiatric disturbance. If a patient here becomes very despondent, depressed, what have you, and you feel, you know, you're just getting a feeling inside that, you know, their sugars aren't what they were. Maybe they're not managing their pump as they once could. So the doctor needs to be notified and a discussion needs to occur as far as if it's safe for the patient to remain on the pump. Okay, so that's that form. And the witness would usually be the nurse. The third appendices is just a list of the pump vendors that are the most popular that we see in the hospital and their updated phone number and pump models and that kind of thing. The one that we see by far in the hospital is the Minimed. That's the third one down. And then the last page is a copy of that patient self-management record, and this is just what it says. It's for the patient to document as best they can their blood glucose at what time they take it. This is a 2-day record, top line and bottom chart there. If it's their self-meter or, well, it says Fletcher Allen Healthcare, but it should be UEMMC. Anyway, the reading, if, you know, the patient is taking their own readings, the patient will be counting their own carbs. If they give themselves a meal dose, bolus dose, you could say that too. Extra insulin, that would go in that box. Correction dose, depending on what their sugar is. And if they have a basal rate change, and that's by the doctor. The patient may know of a basal range. They can adjust their insulins too, but that should be stipulated on this front page here. Okay, and then the nurses review, and what you'll be reviewing once a shift for any of these patients is their site, what the site looks like, where they're, you know, have their little cannula inserted, which gets changed out every 3 days. And the patient needs to bring up their basal rate on their meter for you so you can document what that is once a shift. So that would need to be in the regular medical record charting and, you know, just to make sure that it's on this too. So that's it. You all don't need to know a lot about these pumps. The patients have had, you know, extraneous, very involved training on these pumps before they are allowed to have them, you know, with insulin in them. And they're a $5,000 piece of equipment. So,
So this is filled out every day?
yes. Yes, and that's why there's 2 days on a form. And then again, all of these that the patient's either utilizing or assigned goes into their paper chart scanned when they go home.
And then you said the hospital supplies the actual insulin that goes inside the
Yes,
pump. So who puts that into their?
the patient does.
The patient does that. Okay.
Okay, and if you had a patient that had a Minimed or a Medtronic pump paradigm, you would just call me if they needed supplies. If they have no way to get them here, you know, they have extra at home, but if they have no way, then we would send them over. They're located in the CSR department.
Oh, sorry.
I was gonna just ask if we get the insulin out of our Pixless machine. For
I
them.
would think it would probably come over.
It came over from the bar order. It's
Yeah,
generated.
it would be like any other medication.
Yeah, okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it would be a vial, And then they would know exactly how to manipulate the reservoir, you know, infusion set, getting it all primed and everything.
How many days is it that
Every
it
3
goes in?
days.
Or every 3 days they change everything
Yes.
out and with the
Uh-huh.
site?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep. Most of the pumps hold, well, at least 300 units. Yeah.
So we change the cannula, that's nursing role to do that?
No, they do
They do that,
everything
okay,
related to their pump.
okay.
This is, you have to think of it as their equipment.
Mm.
This is not our piece of
We just verify that they're competent to use it.
You continually evaluate if they're competent to use it. It's just because they may have been okey-dokey, and this is some of what Karen and Val shared with me, on this, you know, when he was admitted, he was okey-dokey here,
Mhm.
but then he flipped, and he would not allow the nurses to do this or do that, and you know, it was an unsafe type of situation in some regards. So, anyway, we don't want any gray. The patients need to know exactly what their role is and what ours is.
Are we keeping this in the room, or is the nurse passing it?
It stays in the
Nurse to
room,
nurse. Okay,
right on their bedside table.
okay.
Because
And
the
then when
patient's
it's-
the one that needs to really be filling out the information.
Because that, again, is telling you that they're, you know, engaging, they're on board with, you know, the responsibility they have to be here with their pump.
Do you file it after they're done though, filling it out or
It
no?
goes, when the 2 days are finished, then that page would be put in the paper chart
Okay.
and scanned in after they go home. And they would need a new form for the next 2 days. Is that clear?
So we don't need to check their fingers, so the patient?
Yes. You will be checking their
Oh,
finger
yeah.
sticks, just like you would anyone else, because we need to have a record of what their
So we
finger
get poked
sticks are.
twice?
There's two places here.
We can poke them
There's our
once and then they
meter
can.
and there's
But don't they have their
meter.
own?
Sometimes they bring their own meter, but sometimes they don't.
Because I remember with that patient,
Yeah, he had his own.
He had his own
He didn't
meter.
want
It's
us to
you.
use, yeah.
That's right,
He didn't want to be poked twice.
right.
But you don't have to poke
Yeah,
twice
you
either
don't
though.
have
You can
to.
just poke once and then get the
Use
blood
the
on
same
the
blood.
bone.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
But the
With him,
lancing device that we all use, you have to get a much bigger sample than what
Mhm.
he needs.
Right.
So I can see his, you know, ideally he should let our staff or hit,
Mhm.
poke his finger so then he has plenty
Right.
and then we have enough for what we need to do. Yeah. So one poke, but it should have been with our lancet
Right.
instead of his. Yeah. No, we still need to be doing their finger sticks because otherwise we don't have a record in our electronic health record of what their sugars are. That was the problem, main problem with that patient. And you can only use the fingers if he's, you know, a patient's testing on their arm or an alternative site. That does not work with our meter. It only can be capillary blood. The results will be errant. Okay. Did you have something, Karen?
I was just gonna say, with him, he would only insist on the arm, and that was the barrier. Couldn't understand why we had to do this, even though you would explain it to him. Didn't want to be poked twice.
Oh, I see, that kind of twice.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, as I, you know, reiterating that the alternative site won't work with our point of care testing meters.
So the RN reviews and signs every shift, right?
Yes. Yeah. Mhm. The site and the patient brings up the basal rate. Those are the two main things. And like I said, then ongoing, you're continuing, you know, I would just recommend that once a shift, the nurse just states the patient is demonstrating, you know, accurate use of their pump,
Yeah, okay.
something of that kind.
Is there an order set with a pump that should come over in our orders that has the basal rate and has all the information?
No, because it can constantly change. The doctor in his notes, if he's conferring with endo, he should be documenting that in his progress note at the bottom of the note. If endocrinology was following patient like they do over there, it's always stipulated at the bottom.
So Karen, with that patient who came late on a Friday,
He-
what was the initial problem? Was we didn't have an order for
Well,
the insulin? Was that
He was
part
from
of
an
it?
outside hospital and he didn't know his basal rate. You know, and I didn't know how, I wasn't going to find it because I didn't know how to
Mhm.
work his pump, but
Mhm.
he, you know, his pump was like his third arm. He owned the pump, he was a type 1 diabetes for 50 years and had it for 3 years. That was the only missing thing was the basal rate on
Mhm.
Friday evening from an outside
So
hospital.
he had, insulin was delivered to us?
Yeah, they put in the
His
order for
meds.
the aspart insulin for the pump, so it was delivered here.
Yeah.
And also, he had it with his supplies, so you could verify that was the correct insulin he was using because it came with him with his own supplies. You don't know, but we would use ours when he
Yes,
filled it.
yeah, we don't use his,
No.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you handled it as totally best as you could, given the circumstances, but it was a risky admission when he doesn't know his basal
I
rate.
know,
If
and he wasn't gonna
someone-
give it up.
I
If we
mean-
have, would a diabetic with poor vision be allowed to have a pump if they can't read
No,
the rate?
no. No, because they're calculating and they're manipulating the pump and
Okay.
they have to be able to see it and, you know, demonstrate, obviously, that they're safe with it. So, it's a hard one. I mean, if I had been in your place, I would have just said, you know, the patient doesn't know their basal rate, and he's not allowing us to do his finger sticks to the doctor, and ideally, the pump would have come off. And then you said, well, he probably would have left if his pump was gonna come off.
Friday night, yeah.
Anyway, it's a real tough one.
So every shift, they have to demonstrate, they have to show us the basal rate,
Yes,
every shift?
yes, yes. Because it can change, and we need to be recording that accurately. The patient should be able to just bring that up really
You said the
easily.
doctor changes the basal rate?
Yes. The doctor needs to be documenting that their basal rate changes.
Is there an indicator when their aspart supply gets low?
In their pump is alarm.
There's an alarm, okay.
Mhm.
So are we charting on this paper only changes of the basal rate or every time we assess the basal rate?
When you assess the basal rate, you don't have to document every time it's changed. If you're doing it every shift, that'll catch it.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're presuming the pump works accurately.
Yes. You're presuming that.
We're presuming, okay.
Mhm.
Well, you'll know if
You'll
you're
know
checking the finger
if
sticks, you'll know that it's
yeah,
not, it's
you'll
not
know
working.
by the
Yeah.
finger sticks if it's not
Something's not working, if the patient's not doing it right or the pump's not working, so you'll know if something's not working.
Yeah, if it's, if it's blocked, occluded, if the cannula somehow has become dislodged, but usually it's user error if the sugars are out of whack.
Well, then we'll know if there's a disparity between the two
Yeah,
meters if we're
that
checking
too.
with our meter
Yeah.
and they have their own
Mhm.
meter.
Yeah, they won't be exactly the same, because the reagents are different. But usually 30 to 40 points
Is more than
variance
enough.
is about. I know that seems like a lot, but we're really looking for a range here. We're not looking for an exact match in the number.
And do they have to allow us to use our meter?
Yes.
Okay, as part
They
of the
have
thing,
to.
okay.
So what will the order look like in PRISM? Will there be anything in the MAR necessarily?
In the MAR, it will say Aspart or Lispro or whatever, Novolog, or what have you, and it'll say, the main word is that it'll say continuous infusion. Because it won't give you really a rate.
And do you have to sign on that at all? Or it'll just be in the MAR?
It'll be in the MAR.
You don't have to have it double signed with the nurse or anything like that?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Because the
Just
patient's
Be
managing it.
visualized there, okay.
Yeah. They will be, like I say, filling the reservoir inside the pump with their supplies. And like I said, the nurse will just be documenting the basal rate once a shift and check their site.
Okay.
Make sure there's no signs of infection or anything, obviously. So the main thing is when you do have a patient that comes in on a pump and it looks like they'll be keeping their pump, the red flag that goes up is just safety. Your main role is to make sure they're safe. And if you know, like I say, in your nursing judgment, you feel like they won't be safe or they're at risk, then you need to talk with the doctor, and then the doctor and the nurse can talk with the patient and make a decision. Yeah. And then if the decision is that the pump comes off, we don't want it lingering in the facility because things get lost. So it needs to be given to a family member, hopefully. They take it home, and then the doctor's responsibility is to then manage it sub-Q with the rest. Until they're better. You know, you can just say, this isn't forever. It's just till you're better. Any other questions? That's it.
Okay, I might just, for the people that came in late, and then for the camera, show them this.
Sure.
So I have insulin pump management binder that I made for the units. We have 1 and 2, so I'll put them on each of the nursing units. And they have tabs. So the first tab are the key points, that document. And the second one is for the policy. And then after that, these are the packet contents. So the self-assessment page, the vendor information, the patient pump agreement, and then the documentation. What do they call this?
Record.
Self-management documentation record, yeah. And then extras are in the back for making copies. And then as Callie mentioned to me earlier, she thought it was helpful to have them in a packet form. So then I think I'll print some out and staple them too, so that it's all in one.
Yep, so
Okay.
you're ready to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you very
welcome.
much.
Oh, anytime. No, I'd like to get over here more, so.